Hello, everyone, and welcome to Conservation Conversations with Chelsea. My name is Chelsea Partridge, and I'm the Supervisor for Brevard Soil and Water Conservation District Group 3. I'm starting this series to talk to people that are involved in conservation and learn how we can get involved in conservation in our communities and at home. Joining us today is Dr. Leesa Souto of the Marine Resources Council. The Marine Resources Council, located in Palm Bay, is an organization dedicated to protecting and restoring the Indian River Lagoon. Thank you so much for joining us today, Dr. Souto.
Hey, Chelsea, thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, we are so happy to have you. So tell us a little bit about yourself and about the Marine Resources Council.
Sure, thank you. I'm happy to be here. My name is Leesa Souto. I'm the Executive Director of MRC, the Marine Resources Council. I am a self-declared water lover. I have always enjoyed the water. I grew up in South Florida on the beach, and I've always been a diver and a sailor and a water lover since I was very, very small. And so, my passion for protecting Florida's waterways really comes honestly from the heart. I got a degree in environmental science from Florida State University back before there was an environmental science degree. So they put together a degree that included a major in biology and a minor in the interdisciplinary sciences of physics and chemistry. And then I got a master's in nonprofit management, which is where I'm working today. At MRC, we are a nonprofit. And my PhD work was done at the University of Central Florida in conservation biology. So I have a background that really, from the passion that I have for protecting Florida's waterways and Florida's beautiful lands, I gained the knowledge that I needed through my degrees and have been actively employed for a number of decades, working for state and local government. And I worked for a for-profit laboratory. I worked for the University of Central Florida as a research faculty. And then starting in 2013, I got the incredible opportunity to come here to the Marine Resources Council. So my background has prepared me, I feel like, perfectly for the seat that I'm sitting in now. MRC is a charitable organization. We were started by Florida Tech professors back in 1983. They had a vision of trying to expand science into the realm of citizen volunteerism. They wanted to expand the number of data that were being collected, and they felt like they could train citizens adequately to collect valid scientific water quality data. That program, Lagoon Watch, was started 30 years ago in 1991. It's still going today. And we still have some original volunteers that have been doing it for 30 years, every week off of their docks. If that's not a commitment to the lagoon, I don't know what is. So we've got, since that, our keystone program that we started 30 years ago, we've expanded tremendously to offer people opportunities of all kinds to volunteer to help the lagoon, help the tributaries and rivers leading to the lagoon, refurbish the landscape with native plants, restore and refurbish shorelines. Pretty much anything you want to do, whether it's restoration, science, or education, we've got a volunteer opportunity for you. Of course, in 2020, with the restrictions and the need to be safe, we have had to really cut back on a lot of our outdoor activities and have limited our volunteer opportunities. But we're hoping, right, in 2021, we're going to open back up again, and we'll be back out having a good time and restoring shorelines and doing all that great volunteer work again.
That's awesome. I love hearing about your background and all the amazing opportunities you have for people to get involved. So you do more than research just the lagoon itself. So tell us about the other bodies of water and areas that you guys do research on.
Yeah, okay, I'll be happy to. And I'll tell everybody out there, the place to find the really interesting information about the water quality and the seagrass quality in the lagoon is on our website, savetheirl.org. We have created the Indian River Lagoon report card, and it gives a score that looks just like your report card score to not only the lagoon, but also the rivers leading into the lagoon. So we know that the tributaries of these rivers and canals that are leading into the lagoon are where pollution is coming from. So if you can, kind of go up the tributary using water quality sampling and looking at habitat quality and biological quality, you can get a sense of where pollution is entering, which area of the land is draining there. Then you can affect a change in that land. It's the landscape that is leading, providing the drainage of pollutants that are going into tributaries that are going into the lagoon. So, what is that landscape? Is it urban? Is it suburban? Is it a landfill? Is it agriculture? It really, you kind of have to look upstream and look at the land around that stream, what we would call the watershed, the area of land that drains into that stream. That's where you're going to find your pollutants. So then we would work closely with whoever, if it's a residential community that has maybe retention ponds that are contaminated with fertilizers and herbicides and causing algae blooms. Now those algae blooms are going to drain out of that retention pond, overflow into a receiving creek that's going to go into a river, that's going to go into the lagoon, and it's going to feed algae blooms in the lagoon, as an example. So saving the lagoon is not just about looking at the lagoon, it's about looking upstream and trying to figure out what's happening in the landscape that's contributing pollution to those streams and tributaries that are going into the lagoon. We know there are areas of the lagoon, some people don't realize it's a third of Florida's East Coast. It goes all the way from Volusia County down to Palm Beach County. It's a very long linear system. Some areas of it have low retention times, meaning that the water does not stay in that area of the lagoon very long. But we know that we've got areas up like in Titusville area, the North Indian River Lagoon on the west side of Merritt Island, where the water goes in there and it stays in there for a year. It may never come out. So those areas, now you've got tributaries draining the landscape, bringing all that sediment, pollution, chemicals, etc., into that area of the lagoon, and it stays. It will stay there and it will just ferment and create muck, which is that black ooze on the bottom of the lagoon, off-gas nutrients like nitrogen and phosphorus that are going to feed algae blooms. And those algae, they flip really fast, they will die and they'll create more nitrogen, and this becomes these excessive blooms that we're seeing in the lagoon that go on for months and months and months, that are really wreaking havoc on our lagoon system.
So how would you describe the state of our lagoon and those tributaries right now?
Yes, well, it's I encourage the audience to go and look at our report card. There are 10 regions of the lagoon, and I guess the spoiler alert is they're all pretty bad right now, but you can see in the report card where improvements are being made over time. We've got 24 years worth of data out there that are all scored, color-coded, easy to look at, easy to understand. You can go to the Mosquito Lagoon or the North IRL, or your specific part of the lagoon, the Banana River Lagoon. If you're interested, you go and just look at that one and look at how it's changed over time. There are areas of the lagoon that have a score of 0. If you get a 0 on your test, you've got some talking to that you're going to get from your parents at least. Like we celebrated because the Banana River went from a 0 to a 4. We're like, yay, it's a 4 now. So there are areas of the lagoon that are in really, really bad shape. And then there are areas of the lagoon that are in decent shape. They're in decent shape. I don't think we've got anything where we've got really, really good shape. One of the concerning but interesting relationships that we found is that if you look at the 4 water quality parameters that the state is looking at as their indicators of water quality health, those 4 parameters there are 2 nutrients, nitrogen and phosphorus, a measure of the amount of algae in the water, which is chlorophyll A, and then a measure of how cloudy the water is, a measure of turbidity. So those are the only 4 parameters the state is looking at for lagoon health for the most part. The 5th one is seagrass health. Now we know the seagrasses in the lagoon have been very, very bad. What's been interesting is that if you're looking at 24 years of data now, if you do a trend line in a statistical analysis for the lagoon, water quality goes up and down, but over time it is relatively flat. We haven't seen any major change in water quality over time. What we have seen is that even though water quality is staying flat, seagrasses are going down. So something's happening to seagrass that's beyond the explanation of it's just a change in water quality. So the lagoon is not in good shape. It's going through what we suspect might be a flip. We don't know what that new estuary is going to look like after it flips. We suspect it's not going to be the estuary that we want because with the loss of seagrass, we're going to lose a lot of our game fish.
What about this seagrass loss? Is there anything that the Marine Resources Council is doing research on to look at the seagrass loss itself and try to come up with ideas of what's contributing to that if it's not the water quality?
Yeah. So there are a lot of different entities looking at seagrasses. The water management districts they're really, the St. John's River Water Management District in particular has got some of, I think, our state's leading seagrass experts on their staff. So we're kind of put it into their capable hands to determine when is it going to be time to replant seagrasses, for example. Is that even a feasible option? We have 7 species of seagrass in the lagoon. So which ones might be reproducible, meaning that we could grow them inside a laboratory or inside of an aquaculture setting and then plant them out there and they're going to take hold. We are, we're faced right now with the challenge of there's no seagrass out there. And so all the vegetarians, the pinfish, the sea turtles, the manatees, all the vegetarians that use the seagrass as their basic, initial start of the food chain, those animals are suffering and dying. And if you put some seagrass out there, they're going to eat it, because they're starving to death. So, you can't really blame them for that. But it does make it challenging to restore seagrass in the lagoon right now. We're working with partners on that concept. How can we actually have an example with Laura Lee Thompson up in Titusville. I don't know if you all know her. She's a fantastic person and a real lagoon lover. She worked with a turfgrass farmer to use his facility to grow seagrass in his turfgrass farm. I mean, what an awesome partnership that was. And then so they were able to remove seagrass, take it to his turfgrass farm, grow it to size, and then replant it in an area that needed to mitigate for seagrass loss. This was years ago. And then I think, the project happened about the time of the first super bloom. So the seagrass has really suffered because when the blooms happen, the algae comes, blooms like brown or green or red or whatever color. We've got like the rainbow of algae blooms in the lagoon the past decade or so. One of the damaging thing it does is it blocks the light. Seagrass is a grass, just like the grass on your lawn. It needs light to photosynthesize. And if there's a lot of algae and the water is dark, that turbidity, the water is turbid, the light can't reach the seagrasses and the seagrasses die because they can't photosynthesize. So that's a simple explanation for one scenario where seagrasses are lost. In that seagrass replanting that Laura Lee did, they had to put little cages around the seagrass clusters to keep the sea turtles and manatees from eating it because they're starving. But they still there are conchs and crabs and things that can still get in. Like you just can't make the cages small enough. Everything is starving out there that normally eats seagrass. So whatever you put out there is going to get eaten. It's not their fault. It's like if we were starving and somebody brought in a cheeseburger, we're going to just sit here and watch it? No, it's gonna be me and you, Chelsea, for that cheeseburger. So we're not taking the lead on the seagrass research. I think St. John's is, and they're doing it in a very logical way. And it's, will it work? And let's not start throwing a bunch of money at putting seagrass in the bottom of the lagoon until we know if the lagoon water quality and the lagoon situation will support it. I mean, we could waste a lot of money on restoration efforts by just throwing stuff out there, right? Boots on the ground. Everybody wants to do projects. They just want to get things going. It's like, well, why don't we see if it's going to work first? So that's the way they're going about it. And I think that's the smart way to do it. Don't invest in it. I mean, they are ramping up. They're trying to figure out how can we aquaculture create seagrass in the lab. and then testing these different mechanisms, including those little fences that we can get some seagrasses started and hopefully proliferating in the lagoon again.
So what do you think are the biggest contributors to the problems in the lagoon?
That's a really good question. I mean, that's the one I think everybody is trying to figure out. And we kind of know basically what the biggest issues are. It's prioritizing, right? So it's easy to say that too many nutrients are going into the lagoon. Too many nutrients. What are nutrients? Nitrogen and phosphorus. Okay, well, where do they come from? Well, everywhere. They come from everywhere. They come from nitrogen rains out of the sky, literally, with every rain event. It comes out of anything that is ever a waste product or a decay product. So, when trees drop their leaves, they're going to release nitrogen and phosphorus. So it is a very challenging thing to try to figure out, in a world awash with nitrogen, where are the sources of nitrogen coming from that are excessive, and how do we address them? So a lot of, and this tends to be in the realm of government, in the TMDL program, the total maximum daily load program, requires reductions of nitrogen and phosphorus. And so they have to figure out where they're coming from through this is the state agency, the Florida Department of Environmental Protection, where these different sources are coming from and how are we going to best address them. It's also easy to say that the two major sources of nitrogen and phosphorus are stormwater and groundwater. So it's just like very broad stroke picture of stormwater is the water that when it rains, all that water that comes out of the sky lands on the surface of the earth and flows over the land, down the storm drain, into the canal, into the tributary, into the lagoon. Most of Brevard County drains to the east towards the lagoon. Some of it drains out to the St. Johns. The coast of Florida pretty much is the interior of Florida draining to the coast. So it's all stormwater. It's all overland flow. When we get those rain events, you watch it drain down your driveway and out in the street into the storm drain, and it's gone. And everybody's happy that it's not in the street anymore. Well, unfortunately, that huge slug of water contaminated with fertilizer, pet waste, cigarette butts, litter, everything that just made your street nice and clean just went into the lagoon, where it's now contaminating the lagoon. And in some areas, it stays there forever. So stormwater is a source. The other one is groundwater. So groundwater is what filters down. So when it rains, it goes, the sand, some of the water flows over, some of it soaks in. The water that soaks in fills up the aquifer, which is where we get our drinking water for the most part. And that's called the groundwater. So groundwater is contaminated by things like septic tanks, and they are designed to release nitrogen and phosphorus. They're designed to do that. So there's a lot of high concentrations of nitrogen and phosphorus in communities where everybody's on a septic tank. And and we still keep putting more septic tanks in the ground. So one of the frustrations we have in Brevard is we passed an ordinance that limits where new septic tanks can be placed in an effort to move them away from the front of the lagoon or lagoon front and keep them high and dry. Just keeping your septic tank out of the groundwater is a great idea. So we've passed an ordinance. We've passed the Save Our Indian River Lagoon sales tax, and millions of that tax money is going to remove people's septic tanks and put them on sanitary sewer. However, we still have development coming in. We're still seeing people coming into Florida at 900 people a day. And that development still allows septic tanks to be put in. So we're like last year, I think we reconnected, or the county really reconnected individuals who live in single family homes, connected them to the sanitary sewer and abandoned their septic tank. And I think they did about 140 of those, while at the same time permitting 500 new homes with septic tanks. So we've got to get a handle on the development part, land development regs. How are people dealing with stormwater? So historically, we're talking again, stormwater and groundwater sources, right? So historically, stormwater has been all about drainage into ponds. Those retention ponds are supposed to have an efficiency for removing nitrogen and phosphorus. We now know that they don't have nearly the efficiency they were supposed to have. those ponds overflow. Those are not permanent places for that water to live. The next rain event, the water that's in there is going to overflow into the lagoon. There are other ways to handle stormwater. There's a concept, and this is something MRC is really pushing for this year, called low impact development. It uses engineered designs to get water into the ground where it falls. So it's about increasing capacity, getting water into the ground. So you don't have as much stormwater, you have more groundwater. There's a whole slew of reasons that this is a great idea. One is that you're reducing the volume of stormwater, and these stormwater volumes are huge, and it's a rush of water that's carrying a lot of contaminants with it. The second one is we're replenishing our aquifer. So like I mentioned briefly, most Floridians get their drinking water from the aquifer, not from surface water. I live in Melbourne, mine actually comes from surface water, but most people in Titusville, theirs comes from the aquifer. So it depends on where you are, but overall, most Floridians drink groundwater. We are looking at potential saltwater intrusion coming with sea level rise. We need our fresh water back in the ground. It's super important, especially as we move forward. So there's not an easy answer. There's no silver bullet of, can we just do this? Can we just address the septic tanks and the lagoon is going to come back to health? Can we just address, a single source of stormwater and the lagoon is going to come back to health? We didn't even start to talk about atmospheric depositions. You know what that's going to mean? That means we need to reduce the number of cars on the road. So there's there's a lot of things, a lot of moving parts, and it's hard to prioritize what to do first. You have to kind of do a little bit of everything. We also have that muck I mentioned earlier, that black ooze on the bottom of the lagoon. It smothers the benthic organisms, the things that live on the bottom. So it's going to smother out seagrasses that are trying to come back, and crabs and clams and all those things that we would love to eat again. So it needs to come out. So we need to get the muck out. And those are $1 million projects, and they take years to get permitted. We need to restore our shorelines. We're losing shoreline erosion in Brevard County at an unprecedented rate, and we're continuing to lose shoreline. High energy system. That's not only a ecological problem, that's a public health and safety issue, right? So there are a lot of moving parts, no easy answer, and all we can do is keep chipping away at it using, as the best available science, collect the information that we need to make good decisions and evaluate what's working.
Well, my next question you touched a little bit on, but there might not be a clear-cut answer to this either. So in your opinion, out of all these different things that have to be tackled to help the lagoon, because it's not just one problem source, what are the ways you think are best to help? Is there anything that you've seen? You mentioned low impact development, you mentioned shoreline restoration. What are your priorities? What do you think are the best things to at least tackle now? Or is it everything you mentioned?
Well, it kind of is. And what's best depends on where you are. And so that's part of it too. MRC, Marine Resources Council, covers the entire lagoon, the whole 157 miles. So down up here, or where they're like up in Titusville, the issue might be wastewater infrastructure. Down in St. Lucie County, the issue might be the Lake Okeechobee discharge. It's like a ton of, depending on where you are, and that's where the landscape tells the story. What's happening there? What are their issues? Versus, there are some things that are across the board. Everybody's got the same issue. Everybody that has septic tanks has a septic tank issue to deal with now, especially along the coast. But then there are some other things that kind of come to the forefront depending on where you are. The beach side has a real challenge with drainage and stormwater pollution. They have some storage capacity, but they're going to be losing it, right? So the more sea level comes up, the less capacity they have to put fresh water down into the ground. So they're looking at a whole different suite of issues associated with drainage and not flooding. As soon as so it really depends on where you are. I know that's probably a lame answer. I don't think that some people are stuck on the paradigm of dilution is the solution. And I don't agree with that. I don't think that we have the political will, the money, or, frankly, the functionality of just let's open an inlet and drain it all out. And that's going to solve the problem. The Florida Tech scientists are studying that. They're modeling it to see if the juice is worth the squeeze, so to speak. If we were to invest tens, maybe $100 million in creating a new inlet, or some type of a one-way pumping infrastructure through the barrier island concept, whether that would do it or not. Whether that would generate enough energy to move water quality out the Sebastian Inlet, or however you want to get it, enough flow generated that you get movement. Because we know, for example, the Sebastian Inlet, the tide is an up and down phenomenon for the most part. It's not a huge mover of water laterally. So that the Sebastian Inlet only affects water quality in about 5 acres. And that's a very expensive piece of infrastructure that we maintain really for navigational purposes, not so much for environmental ones. But what's curious is up at Sebastian Inlet, where even though they have flushing and they have at least relatively clear water compared to what we have up in the northern end of the IRL, they still have no seagrass. So the loss of seagrass in the Sebastian Inlet cannot be explained by the blocking of light by algae blooms, because they have not experienced that at Sebastian Inlet, and yet they still have no seagrass. So there's something else going on with seagrass in our lagoon. So I know that's probably not the answer you wanted. Everybody wants to know what's the one thing we can do, what's the one thing that's the most important. And like I said, it depends on where you are in the lagoon, and it depends on who you're talking to. So, I tell people, let this be the year you stop fertilizing your lawn and see what happens. Just see what happens. Just don't fertilize this year. We're coming up on fertilizer season. March is the biggest year for residential fertilizer application. How about not? How about just not do that and see if your lawn survives? Why apply more chemicals? So, just simple things like that. If you, when you wash your car, why people, don't think about soap is phosphorus, right? It's phosphate. So if you're washing your car in your driveway, all that river of suds that goes down your driveway and goes down the drain, the storm drain, is going into the lagoon. If you live on a canal, you're going to see it show up. You'll have a sudsy canal. Speaking of canals, a lot of people, I grew up where my brother would take the lawn clippings and dump them in the canal after he'd done mowing the lawn. We didn't think anything about it. No, that creates muck. Lawn clippings have all that fertilizer in them that you put on last spring, and they're going to break down and make muck on the bottom. So we can't afford that anymore. We don't have the luxury of dilution as the solution. We can't just keep washing our garbage into our canals and our waterways and expect it to just disappear. We've reached a maximum capacity of humans where that's just not the case anymore. Dilution is not the solution. The world is not big enough to dilute our waste anymore. We're way too many of us to just continue to, think we can just put it over there and someday somebody's going to have to deal with it. It's today and we have to deal with it. So we can't keep that mentality of dump it in the canal, it's going to go away. It's not going away. It's going into the lagoon, which is causing, havoc and fish kills and the loss of an incredible, incredible resource that we all know and love. So I'm sorry, Chelsea, I got no easy answer for that one.
No, that's okay. If there was an easy answer, I'm sure it would have been done. That's why it makes these problems so persistent, and there's no silver bullet. That's why restoration efforts take years, and it's just not an easy thing. But you mentioned a few things, which is a great segue into my next question. You talked about not fertilizing your lawn, and you mentioned not washing your car in your driveway. So what are ways that people at home can do to help the lagoon and conserve our water at home? Daily actions, lifestyle changes. What would you suggest to people?
Yeah, well, those are two easy ones. I like, so I mentioned that the low impact development. So low impact development is something that we're accommodating or trying to accommodate through land development regs. It can happen, LID, just the concept of preventing the stormwater from running off of your property is something that you can incorporate at any point. For example, we have rain barrel workshops. We're going to be at Botanical Fest in March in downtown Melbourne, where we'll have a rain barrel workshop. We have rain barrels here at the Lagoon House in Palm Bay. You can come pick up. Rain barrels are a great tool for reducing the amount of stormwater coming off your property, because it's going to, instead of your roof, a lot of people don't think about it, your roof is just a big reflective shield, keeping the rain from your house, but also all that water coming off your roof. Thousands of gallons of water coming off your roof are just flowing volumes down your store, wherever you've got your downspouts connected, probably to your driveway, right out your driveway, right down stormwater. So hook your rain barrel or 4 rain barrels or 8 rain barrels up to those downspouts, and now you're preventing that stormwater from going down the driveway, and you're collecting it for your own purposes, for your garden irrigation, or somewhere you want to subsidize or contribute to your irrigation system. So it's just a way to save water, conserve water, and also to prevent it from going down the storm drain. Putting in a rain garden, like find an area of your yard. Hopefully it's an area that would look pretty with flowers in it, that's slightly depressed. So this is an area where the water that's flowing across your landscape is going to pool. Dig that out and build it into a rain garden and put some beautiful flowers in it. And now it becomes this amenity in your yard that's functioning as a low impact development tool for reducing your stormwater and getting that water back into the ground. If you live in a homeowners association, you have a responsibility to maintain your retention ponds. Retention ponds are supposed to function as a nutrient uptake tool. If your retention ponds are full of cattails, the cattails have done you a great service, because they have taken nutrients out of the water column, the dissolved nitrogen and phosphorus, built themselves with it, right? So they have turned that into tissues for plants and made themselves beautiful tall cattails. And I'm kind of joking because I had to spend a lot of hours pulling cattails as a young person, but that's what needs to be done. You need to pull them out. So once any aquatic plants that you have in your ponds, if you've got those, there are these floating mats now called bean mats that are awesome. They're gorgeous. You can plant them with flowers. They look like a flowered island out in your pond, but they're going to take up all those nutrients into the tissues of those plants. Then you got to harvest the plants out and do something with them, whether it's compost them and use that fertilizer that you're going to put somewhere away from the water, or just put them in the, you have to send them off to the solid waste facility to turn into mulch. So it's important as an HOA resident, those ponds, those are, besides being a beautiful amenity for lakefront living, they are a functioning stormwater system that needs to be maintained. And one of the easiest things to do is to get the vegetation out of them, or get those bee mats, BEEMAT. You can look it up online. They are a gorgeous island that floats. They still need to be harvested. You take the plants out every year. You plant new beautiful plants. You've got this beautiful amenity out in your stormwater pond that's actively taking nutrients out of the water column. Those ponds all overflow, every single one of them, unless it's dry retention. They're all overflowing, and that, water full of nitrogen and phosphorus and fertilizer and herbicide and everything else that's been applied to the landscape in your community is going to end up in the lagoon or in the St. John's, depending on where you're located. So that's another consideration is really at HOAs, that is your responsibility. The state has not come down on HOAs yet, but with this turn statewide in our water quality situation, I suspect that there's going to be more and more enforcement in the years to come. I know that Senator Mayfield's Clean Waterways Act last year started ramping up the fines for wastewater discharges that happen occasionally, unfortunately a little too frequently, of damaged lines. For example, there was just a huge one in Titusville where a line ruptured. You end up with millions and millions of gallons of raw sewage going into the lagoon, usually through a stormwater pond. So those, those are the big projects that need to be dealt with by the cities. But there's a lot of things that each individual, 500,000 or more, I think there's over 600,000 now in Brevard County of us strong. We're a building population. People think it's just me. I don't do that much damage, but it's not just you. It's not just me. A pollution footprint, so to speak, and it's how you can decrease your personal pollution footprint is what we all have to do, and that's going to make the biggest difference. So we have a responsibility as individuals. We have a responsibility as community members, and we also have a responsibility as citizens, right? Selecting the people in the leadership that we want to see implement a policy and a smart growth policy that's going to maintain and improve our water quality. So that there's a lot that can be done. I encourage you to go to savetheirl.org, our website. There's a whole tab on what you can do. It has the rain garden. There's a rain garden manual out there. There's a video on how you can build your own rain barrel if you want to get your construction hands going. There's a whole list of a lot of other things. We share a love of animals, Chelsea. So of course, you're picking up after your pets, especially if you're walking them along the street where it's right there, the storm drain. I think back in the old days in the city, they used to say, curb your pet. That's not what we're doing anymore. We don't do that. We're picking up and we're putting it in the trash. So, every little bit counts, whether you've got a Chihuahua or a Mastiff, it doesn't matter. It's the same. There's 67,000, I think, licensed dogs in Brevard County. You can imagine how many unlicensed ones there are. Probably 3 times that number of dogs in Brevard County. So that's a lot of pet waste, and it's more of an issue when it's near the water or near the street. If you live on 10 acres and your dog's out back, it's going to be hard to find it. Let's pick it up. But if you live in a residential community that's hooked up to a stormwater system, then it's only as it's as close as the street. You might as well just have your dog your dog's waste going right into the lagoon, because it's going to end up there anyway. So there's a lot of things people can do. SaveTheIRL.org. It ranges from little things you can do in your landscape, in your community, who you vote for, what you drive. Every little bit counts. And you can actually, Brevard County just started a program called Lagoon Loyal, that if you go to the Lagoon Loyal website, you can select behaviors, activities that you're currently doing, and you'll get a certain number of points, and then you can be eligible for coupons and free things. I don't know what they have out there, but I know they have massages and restaurants and different businesses in Brevard that are participating that'll give you discounts or free stuff because you've accumulated Lagoon Loyal points. So encourage you to go out to Lagoon Loyal, register what you're doing, and then you're going to get some pretty cool stuff.
No, excuse me. I've got a Lagoon Loyal account, and I was wondering if you were going to mention that. It's actually a really easy website to navigate, and they've got, there really is those daily action type things that we do all the time that you can get points and discounts at local businesses for. So it's a pretty cool program. And you mentioned the rain barrels too, and I learned recently that there's a rain barrel rebate as well for I think it's for people with City of Cocoa utilities and those that live in Melbourne. If that's correct. Yeah, so for those that are interested in doing a rain barrel, you can get a rebate, which I think makes it really inexpensive to do the rain barrels.
Yes.
So yeah, thank you. Those are great.
We have rain barrels at Rockledge Gardens now also.
Oh, cool.
So we've got them in different places. If you can't get all the way down to the Lagoon House, you can get them at Rockledge Gardens. But yeah, it's a $50 rebate, so you're pretty much getting it for free.
Oh, awesome. That's great. So my last question for you is, how can people get involved with the work that the Marine Resources Council is doing?
Yay, I love that question. So you go to the website, savetheirl.org, click on the volunteer button, and you'll fill out a little form, and then Kate or one of our team will reach out to you and see what it is you're interested in doing. There is, we, like I mentioned, we're really excited for 2021 because we miss all our people. Our volunteers are really the heart and soul of this place. I mean, there are only 4 of us who work here, and we do a lot. So we really, really, really do depend and rely on and appreciate our members and our volunteers. So join MRC as a member. It's the cheapest membership in town. Join our volunteer corps. You can do anything from education, where we'll train you and give you PowerPoint slides and whatever you need to go out and give presentations to youth or adult audiences. You can get involved in our summer camp this year. We're launching 6 weeks of full day summer camps focusing on STEM activities, science, technology, engineering, mathematical skills for young people aged 8 to 11, trying to get that age group to continue on in the sciences and engineering career paths when a lot of them kind of drop out about that time. So equipping our youth, our next generation, with skills that they need to solve the problems that they're going to be facing in the world in the future, which they've got some pretty Herculean problems they're going to be looking at. So we want to equip our young people with the skills that they need and the critical thinking capabilities that they're going to need to make those tough calls and solve those issues. If you want to get involved in that, we're just launching our educational programming. We're always looking for people to volunteer to assist with summer camps. If you love to be around young people, we always have brilliant people, young people here. They inspire me all the time. And then we're going to actually be starting in the fall an after school program where a certain number of students in the region of the Lagoon House will have vans operating that can go pick up people, and again bringing them back for enhanced STEM programming after school, that they can continue to build their science capabilities and their engineering capabilities while here after school at the Lagoon House in Palm Bay. So encourage people to get involved in education. Our restoration programs are very popular because people love to be outside. We plant and do shoreline restoration activities, plant mangroves. We have a mangrove nursery. We have one of the only licensed mangrove nurseries in the state. So if you like to get your hands dirty and you want to play with plants, you can be at the greenhouse, repotting, uppotting, babying, taking care of baby native plants down there, the mangroves. Or we're out on the shorelines in the spring, planting the mangroves, we've been testing alternative oyster reef materials to try to remove plastics. A lot of the oyster reefs right now are made out of plastic bags. So we don't want plastic bags in the water. So we've been testing some other materials. You can get involved in that. And then we have science, which is Lagoon Watch. We have our Lagoon Watch program where you can go out and do water quality monitoring weekly. And we've got people, like I mentioned, have been doing it for decades. We have teachers that are doing it with their classrooms that have been doing it for years. So there's an opportunity there to do science. There's always opportunities to do data manipulation, data management. If you're interested in that kind of science. I know, Chelsea, you mentioned that you're a numbers person. I'm a numbers person too. So I love getting into data and the joy of statistics. I know people think I'm joking. I'm not. Much rather do statistics than politics any day. So we have, go to the website, anything you see that you like, just, reach out to Kate, our development officer, or somebody, one of the staff that you see out there, and say, hey, I really want to get involved in mangrove propagation, or I have a shoreline that I'm interested in having restored, or I want to help with teach the youth of the future, or I'd like to do, kind of like just match up what you're interested in with what we've got going on, and we've got it all going on. And we will welcome you to the MRC family.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Souto, for joining me today and sharing all of this great information about the lagoon and what we can do to get involved. I so much appreciate it. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I'm delighted to be here, and I hope that we'll get a chance to meet face to face soon over
Yes,
coffee.
I can't wait. Believe me, as somebody who loves to volunteer and get involved in the community, like you were mentioning, I can't wait to get back and doing stuff in person again. And
Yay.
yeah, and thanks to everyone that's joined us today. If you have any topics that you'd like to hear about or people you'd like to hear from, please let me know in the comments. And once again, my name is Chelsea Partridge. I'm the Soil and Water Conservation District Supervisor for Group 3. And thanks for joining us on Conservation Conversations with Chelsea.
SaveTheIRL.org.
Yes, savetheirl.org.